Well, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to our third module of our US SMB Global Business Academy 2023. I'm joined here by our co-host, Ms. Karen Parker from US Commercial Services. Karen, good morning. How are you? Good
Good.
afternoon.
Hi, Maria. Good morning. So happy to join you again today on this great program.
Thank you so much, Karen. And today we're going to have a very interesting topic. We are talking about logistics for e-commerce, understanding the processes that it comes with it. And before we go into depth and invite our wonderful speakers that we have today, you may be asking yourself, first of all, how we got here. It's a community, it's an effort. And I'm going to ask Max if you don't mind going backwards to the first one, because I forgot to thank our partners, all those logos that you see in the bottom. Thank you so much for all our partners around the country that are helping us to promote the Academy. Thank you for those of you that are joining us live today and those of you that are watching the video later on. Without working together, we wouldn't be able to make it happen. And this is part, I think, as we move forward to the third slide, this is part, Karen, of how we have learned that it really takes a community, right, to support small and medium-sized businesses to grow. And
Absolutely.
and we have two objectives: to provide capacity building so that we give you between the US Commercial Services with the Department of Commerce and UPS. We want to provide you the knowledge that you can use and leverage to grow your business and access new markets. That's the goal, and that's how you can expand your small business. So let's put a little bit into context. Why are we talking about e-commerce, right? And you are hearing a lot of the statistics. It is here to stay. Just to put a little bit in frame of the numbers, 60.9% of the world population is connected to e-commerce. That means that they can buy things online or they can sell things online. This is a number that is important for us to take into consideration, because that's how now we're seeing a lot of business, and you're going to be hearing a little bit about that. It is estimated, according to Statista and Forbes, that by 2025, e-commerce will grow to $160 billion, which implies a growth of almost 88% compared to 2020. That is huge. Those are big numbers. And why we want you to look in that is to frame the conversation so that you understand how do you play that role within e-commerce. E-commerce is an important part and can be one of your business strategy. Next, please. And 5 reasons why we are seeing, and this is an interaction that we see from a UPS perspective that we have seen around the globe. We do a lot of surveys with our customers. We're seeing now the brick and mortar stores that are providing options of selling online and provide exclusive offers online. They're having to develop a different strategy because this changed during the pandemic. The security, there's 5 reasons that we have seen an advantage of e-commerce is the security of the sales, meaning that interaction and exchange of payments and being able to sell your goods in that area. You are able to have competitive prices that allows you to maybe connect with other customers or new customers. You also have the visibility to import products that can help you as raw materials and then sell new products here in the US, or where you are thinking of doing business. You have more flexibility on what you're able to do. You can also have home deliveries, which now is something that customers are expecting, right? That home delivery, and having that technical support and customer service, which now you can leverage some tools, as you will hear today, that can help you have a better communication with other customers. Next slide, please. So let's talk about a little bit also, what are the e-commerce logistical trends that we're seeing for 2023? We're seeing definitely much more need for efficient deliveries. Customers are being more sophisticated. They want to have a better sense of when and how are they going to get their product. Sometimes we are learning through the surveys, it's not as much of how fast, but having a assurance of when is going to arrive. Also, the customer experience has completely changed the dynamic on e-commerce, and we're going to talk about that in module number 4. And we have a great guest speaker, Ms. Carnelia Jasin, who's going to be talking to us a little bit about that customer experience. How do you leverage and what you should expect and be aware that your customers want to experience. You also have the option of selling on multi-channel, which makes a big difference. And sustainability is a very important topic too that we're seeing more of a trend of. So the next slide. Today in your training, look at this circle in here, the e-commerce process. You're going to be learning about this process. You're going to be understanding how do you engage your customers. These questions are going to make you think, how are you building your framework and your e-commerce infrastructure to work? You will receive the presentations. This will be, you will receive it, but this is a good, like a checklist for you to have to be able at the end of the training today to understand many of the questions that you have here. You have to think about payments, you have to think about delivery, you have to think about how you package your product, you have to think about how do you interact and expand your footprint via e-commerce. And that's why if we move to the next slide, I'm very excited about the speakers that we have today. We have my colleagues, Jared Montgomery and Brandon Webb, who are going to talk to us about what are those e-commerce tools and the logistics of e-commerce, because I think it's always funny. I see my teenagers, well, they're no longer teenagers. My youngest one, no longer a teenager, but loves shopping. If it's going to shop online, makes it look so easy, right? Not understanding what are all the logistics that go behind that part. And then we're joined by the wonderful Miss Cynthia Torres from U.S. Commercial Services. Cynthia, Jared, and Brandon, thank you so much for being here with us. And Cynthia is going to give you a more in-depth of what are all the resources and support that U.S. Commercial Services have for small businesses. So having that in mind, two logistics before we start on the presentation. All your questions, if you don't mind, please typing them in the Q&A box that you see in the bottom of your screen. In the chat, you feel free to tell us where you're joining us from and your business or any information that you would like to share with the group. The questions, I do ask you to please put them in the Q&A, because in case we run out of time, we want to make certain that we are able to follow up with you and provide an answer to your questions. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Jared and Brandon. Jared, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you, along with my counterpart, Brandon. I think we've worked together for 16, 17 years, Brandon.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out just now. Yeah, Maria, thanks for having us. And hopefully if you leave with anything, our sense of humor will hopefully won't make it boring for you. You know, before we dive into e-commerce, and that's the world we live in, and I saw through the chat some of the customers that are government segment. I understand. You may take something away from this, you may not. I can share some horror stories with you. I think Jared and I were talking about this the other day. The government is involved in exports. You know, anything over 2,500, you need specialized documents, or if you ship anything regulatory goods, they want to know what's leaving the country. In my 18 years that I've been with UPS, I was telling Jared the other day and Sean, we were talking about customers. I literally walked up to a customer's office and they were scolded by all the carriers because they were shipping cell phones, and they weren't telling the carriers, who we have to report to the FAA, that it had lithium batteries. So for the first time in my career, I saw a customer's door padlocked with guys in black vehicles rolling up to their office and taking someone away to a place far, far away. And I think Jared had some stories similar too.
Yeah. One of my customers back when Brandon and I were in inside sales was in California, and kept on shipping stainless steel molded keys to Turkey, and didn't understand why they kept on getting returned, and saying that he needed a State Department license to export them. And we tried 4 or 5 times to get these exported. And I finally asked him, I said, what are these keys for? And he said, oh, they're for Patriot missile launch batteries. Yeah, you probably need a license to export that. We just don't want to ship those out to just anybody. So understand what you're shipping, understand the regulations that go behind that, if it is perhaps an encrypted computer, right? Those are actually regulated by the government, BIS, Bureau of Industry and Security. Those are things that you want to get together with Brandon and myself and our counterparts throughout the country with UPS to understand, hey, is there anything needed to make sure I'm doing this properly? So you don't have somebody knocking on your door with handcuffs. That's never a good sign, right? We want to grow your business, not close it down.
Not close your business. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Max, if you want to go to the next slide. So ideally we're going to focus on e-commerce. As Maria said, Q&A, throw some questions in there. We'll try to answer them the best we can. What we really want to focus on today is why export? Why do you want to do that? And what do your customers see? Like, what does the buyer see when if they're hitting your website, or if they have to call an 800 number to get an order or a quote over the phone? And what's keeping buyers from actually buying from customers, and what we see the firsthand experience? I mean, obviously we are in some sort of, global slump. Customers that I've worked with are seeing large growth in exports right now. So, I mean, yeah, the economy as a global footprint is hurting right now, but there's still people buying goods around the world. So that's the greatest thing. And then also we want to see what do buyers really want to see? So that next slide, Max. So here's some fun stats. You can just fill up the screen with all of them that we've, and this is true. We hear this all the time. 95% of the consumers are outside the US. I mean, Jared, if you want to hit on some, I got a trivia question on there this week that I'll throw out to everybody in a second.
Well, it's true. And it's kind of an internal joke at UPS is that, this is the most often quoted statistic by people in the shipping industry trying to tell customers that 95% of the buyers are outside of the US. The reasoning for that is, especially for US customers, and if you're a US origin product, China might be the largest manufacturer in the world, right? However, the most requested and sought after product in the world is a US product, right? So more customers from around the world want to buy from US companies than they want to buy from anywhere else. Okay, those statistics right there show that all global trade growth, 200% more people worldwide will be considered middle class by 2030. Like, for example, China's middle class is going to outpace the entire population of the US as their buying power. And what do they want? They want US product, believe it or not. So those are things to touch on. Brandon, if you want to touch on a few others.
Yeah, this is a fun statistic that I heard this week. And I'll throw it out to you, Jared, since you're the expert. Any guess on how much, as far as shipping to Canada? I mean, they're our partner. They are the biggest trading partner. Any idea on cost of goods sold weekly that goes into Canada? What do you think? Just throw out a number.
5 trillion.
God, that's a lot. You're a little too high. It's 8 million a week is goods sold that's going into Canada. Obviously, they're our biggest trading partner. You want to focus on that from customers that Jared and I understand that we work with SMB, small to medium sized business, but we also work with global, customers that are multi-sites around the world, and they, ship to different countries within APAC regions. Some stuff may not even touch the US, but from a customer that started in their apartment to now that they actually have a distribution center in Houston, and I don't know, they're shipping out a couple thousand packages a day. When we had her do a presentation inside UPS, we asked what was the biggest learning experience, and they said not to take your foot off the hose too quick. And what they meant by that was start slowly. If you're not exporting, start with one country. Don't say, we're just going to go to 220 countries today. So the real simple one to ship with would probably be across border. So you're thinking, South, Mexico, it's really close. North, we have Canada, also really close. So start trading within a reasonable, sector. Don't just say, I'm going to open up my website or sales to anybody in the world. That's going to be tough. It's going to be overwhelming. And from experience, typically you're just going to walk away from it because it's going to be too much information at once. So if you can go to that next slide. Max? So Jared, if you want to hit on like the difference between storefront and marketplaces.
Sure. Storefronts are, your Shopify's, your BigCommerce, WooCommerce, et cetera. And where you're building your own website, you have your own shopping cart solution in there where your customers can buy. So what you want to ask yourself is, on your shopping cart and your storefront, do your customers have the capability of ordering international? Are you able to go in, and when you go in there and start to do international, to Brandon's point, do we want to just start with Canada? Canada is the closest and biggest consumer and buyer of US product, right? So that's the easiest one to do trade with. When we might as well, we're almost combined as one country. We do so much business with each other and we're so friendly, right? We might as well just be another state. My dad's from Canada, so I can kind of claim a little bit of that. But and then when you go into marketplaces, then you're looking at your eBays, your Amazons, Rakuten, Alibaba, some of the international ones, AliExpress, Mercado Libre, so forth, where you're putting your product on their website and you're getting orders from them and you're fulfilling those. Many customers have both, okay? They're playing in both fields to get the most saturation they can. So those are some of those topics. Brandon, anything to add to that?
Yeah, and good point. I mean, we do have several customers from experience that they have a website, but they also ship FBA, so they fulfill by Amazon. I've got a customer outside of Houston. They do both. They get a lot of hits on their website, great market driver, but in Europe, they're just blowing it up. And so the toughest challenge for us as UPS is customers just dive into the deep end and they're just like, I have all these pallets of goods and it's going to Amazon in the Netherlands and it's on hold because I don't have X, Y, and Z. So most of those marketplaces typically will not be the importer of goods, and we're kind of diving in that deep end of the pool, and I'll come back up so we can use our arm floaties in the shallow end. That's where it gets complex. That's where you want to get somebody from UPS involved. I've seen it happen way too often where they're just like, Amazon called and they said to send all these pallets to Canada, and I did, and now UPS is calling me saying I need X, Y, and Z paperwork, and I need this, and I need this, and I'm scared and I don't know what to do. So before you take that, because they will, I mean, Amazon, all these, Alibaba, they track everything. So if they're not out there tracking your website, seeing how many hits you're getting and who's hitting them, they're at some point, you get so many hits, all of a sudden a salesperson from Amazon reaches out or Alibaba and says, hey, Brandon, your website's amazing. We think it'd be really good in this market, this market, this market. We want to order X amount. You see this huge order, you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I have enough in the back to fill this, but I'm going to try, and you just ship it out. What we ask is you reach out to us because we want to help you do it the right way, because they don't want to be the importer of record. And so, I mean, they will help you work through that on how you become an importer of record. Even though you're in the United States, we can help you through all the complex things that happen. It's really not complex if you let us hold your hand going through that process.
Yeah, the important part, sorry, Brandon, the important part is to build everything before you start doing that, right? So if you get with us and allow us to help you build that, get an importer of record in Canada, for example, is a good one. Canada allows US companies to get a Revenue Canada, a tax number, and operate as a non-resident importer. That way, when you're shipping to Canada, to Amazon, you're actually being responsible for the duties and taxes. Amazon is not going to be the importer of record. They're not going to take any financial responsibility whatsoever. And if your shipment gets there, they're going to refuse it. And then it's going to take you weeks, if not months, to get that all straightened out. So let's start out of the gate the right way.
Yeah, and then typically, to your point, I just as you said that, think of Walmart, Costco, Sam's. They're the same way. They want to order your goods. It'll sell good in Canada, but they will not want to be the importer of record. If you're having those conversations with those big box retailers, get us involved. We want to help you do it the right way. There is a process, and we can make it simple. It's like riding a bike. I just didn't jump on a bike and was good at it. It's like I had the training wheels and my dad pushed me, and then we took them off, and then I ate it on the curb a couple of times and finally learned how to ride a bike like a big boy. So we want to help you do the same thing. So if you're having those conversations, reach out to somebody UPS, reach out to Jared or myself, and we'll make sure you're having the right conversations. Max, next slide, please. So what do buyers look at? So there's an easy way. If I have my own website, I can look at where the hits are coming from. These are, you know, 3 of the biggest that we typically see: SimilarWeb, Google Analytics, SEMrush is a free, and you can go in there and get a subscription for a month. And Jared can add to it. I mean, you can look at all the traffic that's hitting your website.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Many customers that I speak with, even on now that I'm on the UPS Capital, the risk mitigation side, are not aware of how much traffic that they're getting from international countries. They don't think that anybody's looking at them other than US companies. And then, you know, when Brandon or myself or our coworkers go in and we actually show them the actual percentage of international web traffic that are hitting their store, their web store, it's mind-blowing. So if you can look at and maybe say 10% of your web traffic is international, and you can convert 2% of that, what is 2% of your annual sales increase? That is essentially free, right? They're already coming to your website. They want to do business with you, but your shopping cart doesn't allow for international commerce.
Excellent. Next slide. All right, so this is, to Jared's point, this is what SimilarWeb looks like. So say that BrandonWeb.com, my website, and Jared's saying, hey, have you ever thought about exporting? I'm like, no, nobody ever looks at my website. And look right here, Australia. And that's one of the biggest, they're so far away from the United States, and it still baffles me to this day, but they are one of the biggest trading partners of the United States. We can help you get goods over there at a reasonable amount, and one of the reasons Australia is such a good trading partner is the de minimis value in the goods made in the US. There's a lot of tax incentives that typically some countries you don't get to see. So this is kind of a view of what SimilarWeb looks like if you went and coded it out, and even shows if you get it via cell phone or handheld device. And if you're getting a handheld device, you might want to check the latest and greatest on UPS. There was an agreement just made, it just popped up on my phone. So I'm sure a lot of people will be happy about that. If you go to the next slide, please. Jared's checking his phone.
Yeah, I'm checking my phone.
So here's a Google sample. Google takes a deeper dive. Obviously, it's Google. Like, I don't know what we did prior to Google. So if you look at Google Analytics, look at all the countries that my website is getting hits from, and it breaks it down to the specific country. It kind of goes through all those and shows you exactly what, I mean, look how many hits I'm getting per month. I think this was a monthly view, UK, Australia, Canada. Now, where I typically shy away from this is Pakistan, Nigeria. If Jared gets a phone call and I say, hey, I'm Ted Smith from Pakistan, I'm going to place an order for $100,000. I'm going to send you a check for $150,000. Cash it and then send me the $50K back. You might want to say, like, nah, this is fraud. So there are crawlers out there that it's always when you place an order, when I pay like my electric bill online, it says, are you a robot? It's trying to catch those crawlers that are out online. So that's what Google sample looks like. Jared, you want to add anything to these?
Well, yeah, to that point is perfect example, because a lot of customers get those fake buying purchasers. The other thing you want to be really careful of too is if a freight forwarder is calling you from Dubai and wanting to make a large purchase, right? Because you need to go through the due diligence of knowing where you're shipping to and who your end customer is, right? Denied parties, right? So a lot of freight forwarders, maybe in the Middle East, for example, are straw purchasers for Iran or embargoed countries. So be careful with that. But also look at this list and notice that a majority of the web traffic is coming from common countries, English-speaking countries that are purchasing. So these are the easiest ones to do trade with. In addition to that, you're also going to look at, and I'm sure Cynthia is going to talk about this as well with the commercial service, but all this free trade agreements that we have in the US with other countries, market your product, especially if it's 51% US origin, then it qualifies to under the free trade agreements with South Korea, Australia, USMCA, Canada and Mexico, so on and so forth. There's so many of them. Colombia, for example, there's a lot of things that you can do to separate yourself from the competition that may not be US origin. And you're going to come back, and because you are US origin, you're actually going to be less expensive than your competition without lowering your price. Okay, so that's where you bring in Brandon's and Jared and other people at UPS that can help you understand those and how to market strategically to those countries.
You want to go to the next slide, Max? SEMrush, kind of similar as all the other three. Kind of shows you where the traffic's coming from. To Jared's point, it's like get us involved early. We want to help you grow your business. Obviously, the benefit for us is the more you ship, the more we make, and we want to help you ship more, especially all these other countries. There really is a lot of buying power outside of the US. Yeah, we lead the industry and the globe in a lot of different things. But if you look at Europe, for example, there's a lot of goods that customers are shipping with intra-Europe shipments or from the UK to Europe. And there's stuff we can do as a company. I mean, we've helped customers that started out small, maybe 15, 20 employees, and like, hey, Europe's really growing. We need help finding a distribution center. So we help them set up a DC within Europe so they can reach those customers, faster, go to market. Because typically what customers want is competitive rate, good service. They want to talk to somebody. They want to feel loved and warm and fuzzy. If you want to go to the next slide, Max. And this kind of hit on what I was talking about. If you want to kind of talk about what buyers want and what they don't want, Jared.
Well, the biggest thing that you're going to run into is high shipping costs, especially when you're shipping international. There again, that's why you want to reach out to your UPS international account manager along with your UPS account manager to work together as a strategic plan. Yes, our shipping costs internationally high, kind of on purpose, right? We don't want everybody just shipping willy-nilly internationally, right? We need to know what you're shipping. We have regulations. We need to know what's in that box. You can't be shipping a bunch, to Brandon's point, of lithium batteries just in a cardboard box and not telling anybody what they are. Okay, you have to have commercial invoices. We need to have registration. If it's $2,500 or more, you have to file with the U.S. Department of Census, those things. We're not saying all this to scare anybody, but what we're doing is we want to make sure that you have success. And cart abandonment, high shipping costs, slow delivery time, if it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks. I know my daughter's purchased from, I think it's called Wish or something like that. And they bought something and it took like 4 months for them to get it from China. So, understand the shipping time and understand your customers' expectations, right? Do they know that they're going to have to pay duties and taxes when it's delivered to them? Did you make that clear at your shopping cart? Or do you come and work with us and some of our partners and get a landed cost calculation in your shopping cart so that customer has paid all those and they have that Amazon delivery experience where it just lands on their doorstep? Okay. Currency not localized, right? That's a big one. Okay. I'm in Japan. I want to order something from the US and it's in US dollars, and I can't get a hold of anybody in the US because everybody's asleep right now. Well, never mind. I'll just move on to another company that converts it into the yen, and I can buy from them because I understand how much I'm paying for it. Want to cover the other topics, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's convenience. That's what customers want. They want options. When they do the checkout, they want, just like I said, Amazon has changed the way the world operates, and it's happening everywhere. So customers want competitive rates. They assume that free shipping is offered around the globe. That really doesn't exist. But you can offer a really competitive rate. You can give it a convenience, like Jared's point. If they're in Japan, you can say, hey, the greatest thing the internet's offered is an IP address. So it recognizes that Jared's in Japan. So my website recognizes that right away. maybe it changes the language, maybe it changes the currency. And Jared's like, no, I can order from this. So, I mean, you can see the top 10 reasons why they abandon it. Then also you can see what customers really want. They want options, they want choices, they want transparency and collaboration. I mean, some people love that little pop-up at ups.com saying, hey, how can I help you? And some people don't. Like, I'm one of those people, especially if you think of like bills, your cell phone bill, cable bill, like you want to talk to somebody. But I work really easy on those messaging systems. I had a bill it was for a physician, and it offered, do you want to automate it, just tech response? I'm like, oh, I'm going to try it. Nothing's going to happen. And I got everything resolved within 5 minutes, and I was probably talking to a robot. So this is what customers, why they don't buy, and some of the reasons why they do buy. Max, if you want to go to the next for us. Again, here's kind of the top things is they want options. I'm typically not seeing a lot of customers ordering a t-shirt overseas and they want it shipped express at $150. I'm just making up numbers. Typically they want more of an economy service. I'm willing to wait, that longer time in transit, the 7 to 10 days. But I want to track it. I want to know where my package is. Like to Jared's point, with his daughter, I order stuff off Instagram. I am the biggest, I don't know, they have me figured out. So their stuff pops up and I order off on Instagram, and typically it's coming out of China. But through the whole process, I can track it. So and it may take a little while longer, but I've ordered stuff and I've gotten it within 10 days. That's a pretty good experience, especially for something that was like $50 and I paid $8.50 shipping, and it came from all the way on the other side of the world. Jared, do you want to add anything on high shipping costs and deliveries?
Yeah, and make all the options available, because you would absolutely be mind blown to know that some people have enough money and they want that shirt now for some event, and they will pay. They'll pay more than they paid for the product to get it there when they want it. I see this time and time again, and I have customers tell me all the time, like, nobody's going to want to spend that much money on shipping to buy my product. Well, how would you know if you don't offer it to them? You would be absolutely amazed at some of the disposable income from people around the world and how bad they want the product because they can't buy it where they live. So think about that and put that in perspective. If you're not opening the door to international buyers, you're never going to get an order from them. So
yeah, that's a good point. I've got a customer in Austin that's sells a specialty product, and it's breast pumps, and it's a portable one. To Jared's point, they have express shipments. With the product costs $50, and they're shipping to the Middle East like crazy. I mean, they send several hundreds a week to the Middle East. And to Jared's point, there are countries that have a lot of money. That's an area that has quite a bit of funds available. Typically oil and gas money, so they don't mind paying. They want it quick. Maybe they have a baby due, or maybe it's for a family member that they're going to a baby shower for. So have all the options available. Let your customers pick. Next slide, Max. And then the other experience, Jared, if you want to talk about this and I kind of fill in the gaps.
Yeah, basically duties, US made goods, often free, right? So again, when we're looking at countries that we have free trade agreements with, maximize your opportunity to market on Facebook Marketplace and other avenues, Instagram and so forth in those countries, okay? Because those customers are going to be able to, again, get your product, even if there's a competitor making it somewhere else at a lower price because of the duty-free agreements and the free trades agreements that we have with so many countries. Taxes, you have to really understand this, right? You have GST, PST, HST in Canada. What all does that mean? Harmonized sales tax, goods and services tax, provincial sales tax. That's where Brandon and all of us come into play. We're going to help you understand that and understand what VAT is, value-added tax, and how you have to get set up with the IOSS account, et cetera. And what's a disbursement fee? $5 to $10. Brandon, you want to expound on that?
Yeah, so what this is a total landed cost. That's what customers want to see. So if I'm visiting Jared's website and I'm like, oh, goodness gracious, Jared has the favorite shirts that I love to wear, and I order 3, at the time of checkout, I want to know what duties and taxes I'm paying. And that's delivered, DDP is delivery duty paid. So I'm going to pay all the taxes up front, and Jared's going to cover it for me. And then a disbursement fee basically is when you have a carrier, hopefully it's UPS, when I set up a shipment, delivery duty paid for Jared's website, I order those cute little t-shirts that I wanted. And what it is basically a high interest loan that the carrier puts on there, $5 to $10 to front the money with that government. So if I order it from Jared's website and it's in France, UPS is going to front the money. The other carriers do the same thing. And then they bill Jared's account, and it's just a wash because I pay it at the time of checkout and Jared pays it to the carrier. So that's what landed cost and disbursement fee means. Go to the next slide for me, Max. And so we threw a lot at you on that one slide, and you're like, oh my gosh, what does that mean? The good news is there are companies out there that do all this. And if you look at these examples, the one to the left shows it in Europe. I think we picked France. So it has the euro, it has the shipping costs, it estimated the tax. It shows the total cost that I'm going to pay for that shipment is 71.99 euros. So that's my total landed cost. So that's what I'm going to pay Jared to order directly from his website. And so you don't need to have some IT guy in the back that figures this out, that hasn't left a dungeon in 6 months. There are companies, and one of them like Shopify. Typically, most customers I talk to have a Shopify, checkout. Shopify does this. There's other companies. We have a relationship with a great company called Zonos. They do the same thing. What these companies, and there's more than just those two, those are the ones that come to mind, but they calculate the landed cost for the customer. So the buying experience is not, to Jared's point a little while ago, what do you mean I have to pay taxes? I didn't know this. And then I'm out, say the one to the right-hand side, I ordered a couple onesies and sent it to my daughter who's in Spain, and she had no idea she had to pay taxes. And so you've got a shipment over there, you're out your sale, plus you're trying to get it back from the carrier, or you choose to abandon it. So you're losing revenue. So we want to help you make it as easy as possible, and that's calculated landed cost. Jared, do you want to hit on anything on landed cost side?
So Brandon and Jared, I'm going to jump in here.
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
love this because, of course, this is what we see a lot on what is required by the customers want transparency, those that are buying, right? We're going to talk about that next week, about the customer experience. But I love how can you pull everything together? And I know we're running almost out of time.
Yeah,
We have
sorry.
some questions that make sense. But I'm going to save the questions for Simona and Angela. The questions that you have, we'll save them for after Cynthia so that we can all answer the questions together. I love this though, Brandon and Jared, because these are the tools that are needed, that in e-commerce, you can actually build a whole process so that you cover all the bases, right? The currency, the transportation, the shipping, and the description and your product, right? And how you connect with your customers.
Yeah, we'll go through the rest of them. Sorry, we're long-winded. If you haven't noticed, we like to talk. Do you want to go to the next one, Max?
Brandon and I like to talk, obviously.
Yeah, and then so this maybe we're going deep down the rabbit hole. This is the process for returns. The 9801 is the United States says, hey, if you use this HS code, this one, it's coming back free. It doesn't matter if the customer ordered it. If you put that HS code on there, maybe it's $10,000 product. The government knows that, hey, it's coming back under that. Just make sure you can track that paper trail. Typically what I tell customers on higher value shipments, have the original tracking number on the documentations to come back, but use that HS code to bring it back in the US, just to clear customs. Next slide, Max, we'll get through these quick. Sorry, I know that was it. So easy enough. Right. So I know we're long-winded. Sorry about we went over. Maria, if you want to pass along to our partners, we definitely want to hear what they have to say.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you all.
Of course, no, thank you so much. Don't leave, because we will go to the Q&A quickly enough. And in the meantime, while we're doing the transition, I'm going to have this poll that I forgot that we wanted to do at the beginning And let me see if make certain that is coming through. So while we invite Cynthia to turn on her camera and start, I'm going to ask all of you to answer those two questions that you see there on the screen. Jared, Brandon, we will bet back to you. Thank you so much for the
thank y'all.
information. And I love the practical advice that you're providing us in all of these things. Cynthia, welcome. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you. That was a lot of information and really good information for folks.
Yes,
So,
very practical, right? So
yes.
Cynthia, as I'm going to invite everybody to, as they're drinking their coffee, answer the questions. Of course, do you sell online? And what is the biggest concern when selling online? And so very interesting answers that we're seeing here. And I'm going to close it. I need 4 more people to answer so we can get a good percentage of participation. Thank you so much for sending us your information. I'm going to end the poll right now and share the results so Cynthia also can have a look about, I don't know if Cynthia, if you can see it,
Yes.
the response that we have. Very interesting. And to Jared and Brandon too, for your awareness, almost 50-50, right? Selling online or not selling online. Very interesting. And the biggest concern with selling online, logistics, online payment, digital marketing, others. So very interesting. Cynthia, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. And tell us about why is the Department of Commerce and U.S. Commercial Services talking on an e-commerce topic and module and the amazing job that you guys do. I'll turn it over to you, my dear Cynthia. Thank you for being with us.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I'm Cynthia Torres from the Commercial Service, and I'm based in Los Angeles. I previously spent some time helping to stand up our e-commerce innovation lab a few years ago, and I have since transitioned over to leading our global textile apparel and sports team, which is heavily entrenched in the retail space. And so we're trying to find new ways to support the retail industry today and exporters writ large in the online channel. Next slide, please. Max, can you get the next slide? Okay, next slide. Maria, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and the slides are changing. So maybe let's go back. I don't know if maybe you cannot. Are you able to see them?
I can see just the opening slide.
Okay, so we're already in slide number 2. How about if we do this, Cynthia, if it works better, would you like to share the presentation so you can see? Because it's changing.
Okay, weird. Oh, I guess okay. Hold on 1 second here. I apologize for that.
No worries. This is part of the technology and why e-commerce requires a lot of different angles, right? On that part. Well, Cynthia is figuring that out. And I don't know, maybe Cynthia, if you are a little bit behind. Let me 1 moment on your sound.
I do see slide 2 now, so I'll just keep going and I'll be a little more patient. So thank you, Max and Marissa. So this slide is just sharing with you before I get into the topic of e-commerce, just showing you what we've been able to do in this last year in support of U.S. exporters by supporting 32,000 U.S. companies to export $134 billion worth of goods and services abroad, to the tune of supporting almost 600,000 jobs and SMEs. Next slide. Marissa, maybe you can tell me when you can see the slides.
Yes, the slide is on. The third slide is on.
Okay, very good. Just real quickly, for those that are not familiar with the U.S. Commercial Service, we are a global network of international trade professionals dispersed across the United States, and we work in alignment with our commercial section of the embassies, the consulates, embassies and consulates around the globe to support our U.S. exporters and helping you gain global market share. Our services are comprised of export counseling, market intelligence, business matchmaking, and commercial diplomacy. Next slide. I'm still on slide 2, but I'm assuming you can see the slide.
Yep,
That's
we're now in e-commerce is growing. And I love that statistic, Cynthia.
yeah. So e-commerce is growing. And for me, this slide actually says it all, if you will. There's, you've heard a couple different statistics thrown out there today. I think the bottom line here from this slide to take away is that there's a lot of money that is changing hands in the online sales channel. And if you're in the retail space and the consumer goods space, this is really, you can't afford not to really lean. Okay, I'm assuming you can see the next slide, which is the cross-border business to consume. Thank you so much. The B2C world market value that's projected between 2021 to 2030 in the billions of dollars. To me, this was like a wow moment when you look at where we were just a couple of years ago in 2021 to where we're projected to be by the end of this decade. If you're not in the e-commerce space today, this should really get your attention and really to start having those conversations about what your individual company objectives are and what your strategy is going to look like. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that going forward. But this is clearly a significant data point. 7 years. Next slide. Okay. Again, I can't see the slide, but the e-commerce as a percentage of total retail sales worldwide. This slide I put in here because I thought it was another interesting look at the data and showing you exactly how much of the global consumption is happening in the online sales channel. And I think it's important to note that, if you look at the bar chart there and you can see the 4-point jump between 2018 and 2020, we know that was due to COVID being the catalyst in a global black swan event and everybody having to be at lockdown mode and depending on this thing called e-commerce, right, to get what we needed. But that's not what's carrying us over into the projected growth going forward. What's really driving that growth going forward is, and our colleagues over here who just presented kind of touched on it, it's the changing behaviors of the consumers themselves, right, that are really driving this expectation and this demand for goods. It's the convenience of e-commerce shopping online and the ability to do that right from the palm of your hand to get what you need. I just did it last night, as a matter of fact, when I was received a phone call from my sister-in-law to buy a camera battery for my nephew who's about to leave for summer camp. So I punched it in, got it ordered, it would be delivered today. That's a different world we're living in. The other drivers behind that are the speed at which the consumer is receiving the goods is driving the growth in e-commerce. And for me, I think one of the most interesting drivers is the rapidly evolving technology that enables consumers to actually engage in e-commerce and online retail sales. And that is changing, and to a point to where it's all about customization to the online shopper, the individual customization. What are your particular shopping behaviors, and retailers that are really engaged and really on point with what's happening and driving e-commerce sales from a retail perspective are implementing those technologies and bringing that customer experience to you in that individualized, customized way. And they're also integrating augmented reality to that experience, as well as AI in the background. Next slide, please. Okay, the next slide is reflecting the global compound annual growth rate by country of what's happening in e-commerce. And what I take away from this slide here, you're looking at 11% growth, a little over 11% growth globally in e-commerce. I have not taken the time to kind of cross-reference my research here, but essentially based on my past experience and what I read from this slide, everything to the left are the markets that you can kind of assume have the customer base that's starting to increase their adoption of e-commerce practices and the internet penetration within the country. And everything to the left, or I'm sorry, to the right, representing North America, Europe, and across Asia, those have been the early adapters to e-commerce. So the global growth being right in the middle makes perfect sense to me. And so you can see, again, it's just another validation point that e-commerce is growing. It's not going to be slowing down. In fact, I would say that quite a bit of our sales is going to be moving into this space, which brings us to the next slide. So this next slide represents how consumers are preferring to shop and which channels they're going to. So this is also known as your channel mix. Today, I'm going to focus in on the search engine optimization aspect of this activity and why that's so important. In a nutshell, and for sake of time, I'm going to just say that search engine optimization, while each one of these channels is very important and could be a very complex slide and could be presented in many different ways, what you need to know here is that each one builds upon the other and complements the other. You can leverage all of these channels in a number of ways, but the lowest hanging fruit, and where I'm sure you're asking yourself, where do I begin? You want to begin with search engine optimization and making sure that your website can be found by international buyers. So if you're not able to be found in a Google search, you're certainly not making sales. Next slide. Okay, so again, there's a lot of information that's been shared today. So what we've always told companies at the e-commerce innovation lab and throughout our counseling across the commercial service is start with this 5-point strategy. You have to define your objectives around the global, around your digital objectives for going global. And that's going to be slightly different if you're a consumer goods company versus a business-to-business industrial focused company. The search engine optimization for attracting international businesses or international customers to your website, and what is it that you want, what action you want them to take there. I'm not going to go into the other three, but just to touch on it, the back end infrastructure is critically important, especially when we're talking about the future of heavily, very fast moving technology that's enabling a lot of this to happen in the first place. So you want to spend some time as your company's group to talk through those points, and then certainly what is your channel mix that I just mentioned, and then being able to establish KPIs that allow you to track it. Next slide, please. So talking about search engine optimization, if you ask yourself one question today, ask yourself, is my website reaching international audiences, and am I doing the right things for that audience? Next slide. Distilling this down in 3 basic concepts for your website and attracting international customers. The first one, and the least expensive, or in order to attract those customers, is to just internationalize it. Make sure, as I think they mentioned in the last presentation, make sure that if you are made in the USA, that you're putting that on your website, that you're indicating that you're US made product, that you are open for international business. And some companies do that by inclusion of international flags in the upper right hand corner. You know, just little nuances like that. The second way to address a website strategy is the regionalization, meaning you're going to adapt it to Asia, or you're going to adapt it to the Middle East so that it speaks to the region, not necessarily an individual country. The next would be the localization, where that individualization and that specialized understanding of the consumer base in your target market, such as South Korea specifically, you would be adapting your website to that local audience. And that requires a little bit more effort and a little bit more investment. But those are the 3 basic types of approaches to adapting your website for attracting international customers. And obviously there's more to it, but for sake of time, we'll keep moving. Next slide. Yeah, and again, I heard our speakers talk a little bit about indicating that you are open to the international buyers. So when they do come to your website, there's plenty of technologies out there. And I think I saw somebody in the chat drop in the name of Zonos. I know for a fact that Zonos has a welcome mat that reads those IPs and knows what country they're coming to and will greet that buyer in their native language. So that right there is a pretty powerful message and a very simple plugin. And there's many other technologies that will do that, and certainly the currency converter and things like that. What does your contact page look like? If you actually are having people complete a form online, are you allowing that address field to adapt to European or Canadian addresses? So little things like that make a big difference. And certainly if you have overseas representation already, making sure that somewhere on your website they can find that easily, so they know that there may be somebody in their own region that can help them. Next slide. Okay. This slide basically touches on what are the biggest issues and the most common issues in search engine optimization that companies are running into. And the number one by far is metadata issues. And metadata issues, we used to use this analogy of, your house on the block or your neighbor's house on the block. It's the house that has the broken windows and the hanging shutters and the chipping paint. Consider those metadata issues. It's that low-hanging fruit that you just need to fix and update and correct, and then it brings the whole value of your website up to speed, and it gets you higher visibility through the search box. Anemic page content searches. So when those bots are crawling the web, if there's not enough dynamic information on the page for them to index and analyze, that can also hurt you. So 2 easy fixes, and then the outdated product pages, and certainly leveraging keywords. Next slide. Okay, this is just an animated, I don't know if it's going to work, but it's an animated slide deck of how search works. You obviously have the Google search engines and the bots that go out and crawl the web. Keep hitting there you go. And then they're just scouring the web to read your website, index all the information, and that's going to produce where you rank in the search results, whether you're coming up in the organic searches or if you're using paid. And then if you keep going through this slide, it's very important too, you probably are aware, but if not, you need to optimize your website for all devices, not just desktop devices. Your mobile phone, because consumers around the globe are very big on purchasing through mobile devices. And actually Google, who controls most of the world's search traffic, will mark you down in the search rankings if you are not optimized for mobile. The last little image there is where a lot of companies overlook this, is in the image alt text. If you have images on your website, but you don't have any corresponding descriptors and definitions of what those images are, the bots don't know. So you need to make sure that on the back end, you are completing all of that image alt text, so the bot can analyze what those images are, and again, help rank you higher in the results. Next slide. So where to begin with all that? How do you begin to do this? SEMrush or SEMrush and several of the other resources that were mentioned earlier are a good place to start. If that's too much, by all means, the U.S. Commercial Service has a new service called the Website Globalization Gap Analysis, where we will run some of those web crawls for you to analyze your website. We will highlight what the reports are showing us, where you have those deficiencies. We go over that report with you. It is pretty cost-effective way to get that started. It'll range between 100 and 400 depending on the size of your company, and you can use step money to actually get those executed. Next slide. This is just going through the process. If you are interested in doing a step program, or I'm sorry, a website globalization review on your website, you can find your local trade specialist and your local export assistance center at our website at trade.gov, and then the /commercial-service-office-US. And then if you haven't, we have asked for you to complete a short intake form to give us the information we need. And then it's just working closely with you to execute on that and brief you on that report. Next slide. This is just an example of 4 companies who utilized the service that made the changes that were recommended and were able to increase their website visitorship or actual sales revenue. And I think the I like the quotes from the one in the lower left-hand corner. Easy website improves sales and visibility. He was able to go from 3,000 a day to 5,000 a day by making some of those adjustments. Next slide. Okay, I believe the next slide is just highlighting some of our additional online resources. Next slide. Talking about the e-commerce frontline library, which has got a series of articles that you can click on and review that will help you address some of your search engine optimization issues and digital strategy ideas. The next slide after that would be the e-commerce market research, where we have taken all of our e-commerce sections of our country commercial guide and compiled it all into one area where you can look country by country what is happening in the e-commerce landscape vis-a-vis each country. Next slide. Okay, I believe this last slide should be the additional commercial service programs and resources. And that's everything from the Gold Key, which is our premier service of helping you identify potential trading partners before you arrive in country. I won't go through the whole list for sake of time, but you can go to www.trade.gov to find more information on all of that. And again, my contact information on the last slide is available for you. And I also included the contact information for my colleague, James Bledsoe, at the e-commerce resource center. Thank you.
My dear Cynthia, this was awesome. Thank you so much for the information. And don't worry, you had your time. We are in the recording and people will be able to see all the information. Thank you to everybody that has participated. Cynthia, very interesting, all the resources that are available for you from U.S. Commercial Services, right? And I love the service and the analysis of the web page. I think as we have done surveys around the world, we have seen some of the challenges. If you're not able to watch your web page in a phone, people are using more phones or tablets around the world. So it's a good thing to have that information available. We have some questions. We are out of time, I know on that part, but we are going to follow up with Q&A. And I think my dear Karen, you are here too. For us, what we invite you is please add and send us you have our email addresses, send us questions. For the questions that we received in the chat or in the Q&A, we will follow up with you via email to provide you the information, and we will be giving this information. The model next week, if we can move forward, Max, please, will be, let's skip forward. It's going to be about the customer experience, and I am very excited because we will have Ms. Cornelia Adjacent, one of our guest speakers, and myself. We're going to talk about customer experience. How do you make it happen? And Cornelia is going to talk about how she supports as a small business owner. How does she help other small businesses leverage customer experience and expand their products? So that is also very important. So with that, I want to thank Cynthia, Jared, and Brandon. I'll turn it over. Karen, any goodbye words?
No, I'm sorry we didn't get to Q&A. And, if you're looking for the commercial service, we're here to help you answer those questions. Maria can get you to the UPS people. So target markets, exporting, general questions, find your local specialist through the link I put in the chat. So thank you, Maria.
Thank you all very much. And with that, have a wonderful rest of the week. And may the force be with all of you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Cynthia,
you.
thank you. Bye, Jared. Bye, Brandon.
Bye.